We're very excited to have back in the studio with us Dr. Madan Vasishta. He is the Associate Professor in the Department of Administration and Supervision at Gallaudet University here in Washington, D.C. 4 years ago, Dr. Vasishta came to the studio to talk about his book, Deaf in Delhi. And now he has written a follow-up to that book called Deaf in D.C., about his experiences moving from India to the United States. And we have in the studio with us interpreters who are helping us with the sign language and English interpretation. So welcome, Dr. Vasishta. It's nice to have you back.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So can you tell us more about this book, Deaf in D.C.? Why did you decide to write this book?
When I finished with Deaf in Delhi, I thought I was finished, and the story stopped when I flew from India and arrived to America. But actually the real story started there. After I wrote my first book, a lot of people wanted to know what happened afterwards, and that's why I wrote the second book.
Of course people want to know what happened to you after you came here. How would you compare your experience as a deaf person living in India versus a deaf person living in the United States?
You can't compare. There's a world of difference, because deaf people in India have no educational rights, no employment opportunity. I say no, there are some, although very limited. In America, they have laws and services regarding education. They have everything here. And deaf people can work. For example, if I was still in India, I would possibly be working on a farm or as a photographer. But here in America, I have my bachelor's, master's, and my PhD. I work in administration. So there's really no way to compare the facts. There is a world of difference, and I hope that someday Indian people will have equal opportunities as Americans.
I think we all hope for that. And I was wondering, have you returned to India recently, and to what extent have attitudes changed in India about deafness?
I go to India 2 to 3 times a year. I work there in training people, and I also do lecture tours. Things are changing slowly and steadily, but for the better. For example, in 2 weeks I'll be going back to India, to the National University, and they've invited me to lecture and help start the research program. 40 years ago, I could not imagine being invited as a deaf person, much less having everything, travel arrangements and everything arranged for me. So that is a large change, and hopefully it's bringing us closer to equality as equal citizens, as American citizens.
That's great, the work that you're doing in India and seeing the progress, even though it is slow but steady, as you said. When you moved from India to America in 1967, what was the most shocking cultural difference you observed when you came to the U.S.?
There's a lot, and I have them all written in my book. But for the sake of time, I will give an example of one thing that shocked me. When I saw a man and woman hug each other, and that was a public demonstration of affection, but I focused on what I was seeing. I saw a girl hugging a boy, and I assumed that they were boyfriend and girlfriend, but later I saw her hug another boy, and then another boy, and I thought, how many boyfriends does she have? Later on I found out that that was just a greeting, like we would do in India, nothing more. And then another thing I noticed was that here in America, a man hugging a man was all right, a woman holding a woman's hand was all right as friends. Here in America, one time I was sitting with another man, and by mistake I rested my hand on his arm, just like in India as we would do, and he slapped my hand away. and called me queer. And I thought, oh no. So I quickly learned to keep my hands to myself. That was a big shock.
So what about some positive experience you had of American culture? Maybe something that surprised you about American culture when you came here?
The first big surprise that was positive was seeing signing. I noticed everybody was signing, whereas in India, sign language does not so much exist. If you were signing in India, people would stop on the street and wonder what you're doing. Some people would stop and make fun of them. But here in America, sign language was respected and accepted as a form of communication, just as the President of the United States